Hi everybody, this is Boog Reviews, and today I'm finally back with a new review since I'm feeling well enough to do it. And today's review, in honor of Fallout Day, is going to be on the brand new McFarlane Toys Elite Edition Fallout 76 T-60 Power Armor figure. So before we take a look at the Power Armor, let's go ahead and take a look at all of the numerous accessories that it comes with. So first up you get the Fallout 76 stand, but the Power Armor can stand very well on its own. You really don't need this base. For certain poses you might, but I haven't needed it so far when I've posed it around. Up next you get the data file. If you want to read that, go ahead and pause that now. I love the gold foil on this. You also get some Elite Edition points. They come with all these Elite figures, and now I actually have enough points to redeem a prototype, so I'm really excited about that. Up next it comes with a set of fisted hands. Up next, you get a right pointing hand and a left relaxed hand. I definitely wish we would have got a matching right hand with this one. I think that would have been really cool to have a set of relaxed hands with this. Up next, it comes with accessory holding hands. Up next, it comes with the plasma gun. And I think this is sculpted really nicely. It's cast in a gunmetal color with a really nice dry brushing of silver over top of it. That dry brushing brings the detailing out really nicely, and you get these really bright green dots painted on, and that really pops. And despite this accessory looking really good, it does actually lack paint. The paint scheme in the game is a lot different than this. So while it does have some pretty cool paint to it, it's not quite accurate. Up next you get the laser gun. Again, looks really good, but not quite accurate. You do have the yellow on top, and they even did a dry brushing of silver over top of that yellow. But yeah, it could have used some more paint detail to it. Up next, you get the alien gun. This one actually has some decent paint detail to it. It's still cast in the same color and has that dry brushing of silver. And I can't tell what color that is, like a reddish-brown kind of color. Which, if I remember right, there was actually an all-red variant of this gun in the game. But yeah, this one doesn't actually look too bad. Up next, you get the T-60 gun, which, if I remember right, wasn't actually in this game. I might be wrong about that, but I don't actually remember this being one of the weapons in the game. Up next, you get the Gauss minigun, and this has some phenomenal sculpt detail to it. But they didn't even bother to dry brush silver on it like on the other weapons. The only sort of paint detail you get is red down here. Just like with the other weapons, it could have been painted a lot better. But honestly, I think a silver dry brushing would have made the details go a long way, it would have made them pop. I'm also not really happy with the way it holds the side here. It's kind of just gripping it barely with its fingertips. I mean, you can actually get it holding on there. But yeah, they should have made it kind of hollow underneath here. That way you could actually get the fingers going through it and getting a proper grip on this. Up next, you get the light machine gun. Again, some really awesome sculpt detail, but hardly any paint. You do get some brown down here on the handle, but there should have been brown on the stock too. I think if they would have done brown right here and then dry brush silver over top of this, it would have looked just fine. But yeah, the only sort of paint detail is there on the handle. And finally, you get what is probably my favorite accessory to display this with, the Black Diamond Ski Sword. And this looks really nice. You can actually make out how it says Ski-O-Matic and Soft Landing. All the details are printed on right there. And that looks pretty crisp. It can also hold this really nicely. It's actually a pretty tight grip on it. It's not quite tight because I turned it that way so you could see all the details on there. But yeah, I just really love the way this looks. That's probably how I'm going to display it. I think it looks really cool like that. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at its head sculpt. So taking a look at this head sculpt, it is sculpted really nicely. If I remember right, I think the visor right here was done in black though. They did it in some gray colors. But I love the paint that McFarlane Toys did on this. So they did a dry brushing of black, and then you get this kind of brownish color over top of it. And I can't tell if it's actually a wash of brown, or it's brown mixed in the plastic. Because a certain way that you hold it to the light, you can actually see some swirls in the plastic. So it almost looks like they mixed this color in the plastic. Either way, whatever they did looks really good. The armor looks very worn and rusted. It just looks really, really convincing. When I got it in hand, it has way more paint detail than I thought on it. So I love that. You know, the dry brushing of black brings out all the details, like on the helmet there, really nicely. That looks really good. You also get the brown back here on the tank. And I love the way that looks. Like I said, it looks very worn and rusted, and that looks very cool. You could really tell the dry brushing of black right here. And there's actually some subtle texturing. If you look closely in the light, you can see that they textured it. And that dry brushing of black brings that out really nicely. As well as that brown paint. They went pretty heavy with the wash on the fingers, but I actually think that works because it brings the detailing out really nicely. I also love that they articulated the shoulder pads. It's on a double ball peg here, so whenever you're posing the figure around, you can move these all the way around. You know, you can actually make it look realistic. I was afraid that these shoulder pads would hinder the articulation, but they don't. One thing that I did notice on this figure, because for the most part, the joints actually move really fluidly. And that's because the mold release that they put on this. It's like kind of like a Vaseline type stuff. It is very apparent on the shoulders right here, and even the hip joints. So they coated this figure in that like mold release stuff. That way the joints can move really smoothly. And that actually works. But while I'm posing it around, I will get it on my fingers because they slathered it with it so much. I noticed that there's more of a gap on the left thigh than on the right. You can see that the right is actually just about up to the top here, but on the left you get a little more gappage. It's not a whole lot, but yeah, that is a little bit different on this side. I will say that on the left side, the joint also does not want to move up here at the thigh. It is really stuck. And anytime I have a stuck joint up here, it's either really tricky to get unstuck, or I can't get it unstuck at all. You know, I did heat this figure up, and I couldn't get that out. The way that McFarlane engineers these joints right here makes it really difficult to get this part off. You know, everything else, if I have an issue, it's really easy to pop off. That's part of why I like pinned figures. You know, if I have an issue with it, I can just pop it apart, pop it back together. It's really easy. Pinless figures are not that easy to disassemble if I have an issue. But yeah, these are the only type of joints on McFarlane that I found difficult to get off. So I might have to work on that some more to get that thigh swivel unstuck. You can see some more of that brown in the plastic here. And man, that just looks really nice. I think that's actually a pretty realistic effect to look like either weathered or rusted armor. Man, that looks really awesome. For the feet, they actually used ball joints. And that works really nicely. When I got it out of the package and I saw that they used a different type of joint, I was scared that it might be hindered. But surprisingly, it's not. You know, for the most part, I think this figure is articulated really nicely. We'll be going over that in a few. But I did want to say it really surprised me. I mean, it does have its drawbacks since it is a big, bulky armor. But for the most part, the articulation is pretty nice. You can see that they didn't sculpt anything on the bottom, but they did continue all the paint there, so I do appreciate that. And then there's a closer look at the back. They even sculpted these. When I heated the figure up, I did take these apart because they were stuck. And this texturing is sculpted all the way around the joint there. What ended up, the reason why this was stuck is because they painted these pins right here. So originally these did have pins till I took it apart and moved it. So that's actually my fault. NECA does the same thing, and it makes the joint stuck something fierce. Which one is it? Right here you can see there's still a little bit left. And this one didn't come off. The paint didn't come off the outer right side here. So yeah, they did paint the pins right here, and for some reason that made these stuck. I did forget to say that. I also did have to heat up the lower legs and pop them apart. But after that, they started working really nicely. So now, let's go ahead and go over its articulation. So it has a ball jointed head that can look up all the way. Can't really look down that far. You can move its head side to side very nicely, and around just a little bit. You get these double ball peg shoulder pads that can move up all the way. It can spin all the way around like that. As I said, like whenever you're moving the shoulder up, I think that looks pretty realistic, and I'm pretty happy with that. It has shoulders that can move out all the way. I don't think there's any butterfly joints. I definitely wish they would have included that on this. Has a swivel at the bicep, single jointed elbows that can bend in a decent amount before it hits right here. Wrists that can move up and down and spin all the way around. Ball jointed diaphragm that can move back just a little bit, forward just a little bit, side to side, and around just a little bit. I think that's the place other than the hip here where the articulation is most hindered. It has hips that can only move out that far because of the way the armor is sculpted. It can kick forward a decent amount. It can kick back all the way. On this side, the thigh swivel is stuck. On this side, it moves really nicely. It has single jointed knees, a bit crunchy, but it can move back that far. And ball jointed ankles that can move down just about all the way, up all the way, side to side, and rock really nicely. So now, let's do some size comparisons. So first up, here it is next to Lilith. I think this was the first Elite Edition figure that I got. I love all the gaming figures we're getting from this line. Here it is next to the Doom the Dark Ages the Doom Slayer figure. And the power armor towers over this Doom Slayer. And finally, here it is next to another gaming figure that I have, the NECA God of War 2018 2-pack Kratos figure. Before I ended this video, I did think of a weapon that I wanted to put in its hands to see if it would work. This is the minigun from, I think it's the very first munitions pack we got from McFarlane. And I think this looks really cool in its hands. You know, it's a little bit underscaled because it's not made for a huge figure like this. But you know what? I actually really like that. I think that looks pretty cool. So yeah, that's an additional way to display it if you have this weapon. So overall, I think McFarlane Toys did a pretty decent job on this. I'm pretty happy with it for the most part. I think the sculpting is actually phenomenal. I think the sculpt of this looks really awesome. I love all the accessories that we get with this. We get so many accessories packed in with this, it's not funny. And I think the paint variation is also really good. From the promo pictures, I thought this was just primer gray for some reason. My eyes aren't the greatest either, so that might be why. But having this in hand, it looks really good. The dry brushing of black that they did on it, that brownish color, it just makes it look really worn and weathered. You know, it looks really good in hand. It is definitely way more detailed in the paint area than I thought it would be based on the promo pictures. So I'm really happy with that. I do, however, have my nitpicks with this figure, especially since this is an Elite Edition and it's higher priced. You know, it's higher priced, but the weapons that it comes with aren't quite accurate. You know, they do have some decent paint on them. I will say that they're painted, you know, a little bit better than other McFarlane weapons. Like the dry brushing of silver actually does bring the details out. But the paint schemes aren't accurate on them. I wish they would have had some more paint. Especially the weapons that got hardly any paint. I mean, the Gauss minigun is just cast in that, like, gunmetal color. They didn't even bother to do a dry brushing on it. The only sort of paint variation it has is that tiny bit of red on the bottom. And the light machine gun got the same treatment. You know, it's just cast in that gunmetal and has barely any paint variation on it. You know, there's brown on the handle, and there needed to be some paint on the stock. It's really weird that they included the weapons, but didn't make them accurate or paint all of them like the rest. I also think that the articulation in some spots needed to be improved. I definitely think that it should have had butterfly joints similar to the DC Multiverse line, and I think the hip joints really needed improved. You know, that left side is almost completely stuck. It does move very slightly, but it feels so brittle that I think if I move it too much, it'll break, and I don't want that. I'm definitely going to have to try to disassemble it and see if I can fix it, which even heating it up, I couldn't pop that joint apart. You know, maybe I just need to work on it again, but it was not budging when I did try that before this video. So despite those issues that I do have with this figure, I'm still happy with it overall. You know, even though I do have complaints with this, it's still a good figure. You know, I can have complaints with it, and it still be a good figure. You know, both of their statements can be true. This is actually the first Fallout figure that I have, and I'm really happy with it. I'm also really looking forward to the rest of the line now. You know, we have more video game figures. I think those were actually announced yesterday. And then the TV show figures. I'm especially excited for those TV show figures. So yeah, overall I'm pretty happy with this. It is a little bit pricey, but I think it's worth it in the end. So, that's my review. If you like this review, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.